Hello, everybody, and welcome to our online Salon Series event. Thank you for taking the time to join us tonight as we hear from our presenters. My name is Nicole Tainch, and I am the manager of the McDowell Foundation, which funds teacher-led research here in Saskatchewan, and I want to welcome you on behalf of the foundation tonight. We're joined tonight by people living, working, and playing on treaties 2, 4, 5, 6, 8, and 10, the traditional lands of the Cree, Saulteaux, Dene, Dakota, Lakota, Nakota, and homeland of the Métis. The McDowell Foundation is committed to honoring our relationships with one another that allow us to share this land as we work towards reconciliation. I'm so excited to hear from our research team tonight as they present their work. The information shared in this presentation represents countless hours of dedicated research by the teachers and educators involved in this project. Their hard work contributes to an enhanced teaching profession here in Saskatchewan, and the foundation appreciates them taking their time out of their busy lives to present here tonight. So I would now like to introduce our moderator for the evening, Derek Bars. Derek is a member of the senior administrative staff at the STF, so I'd like to welcome Derek, and I will throw it over to you.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to tonight's session. Before I turn it over to our researchers, I wanted to quickly go through some technical items. To ask questions or make comments, you can use the question and answer feature at the top where you can enter in or vote on questions or comments. Voting will help a question or comment rise to the top, so to speak. We also invite you to raise your hand feature to use the raise your hand feature to speak where we can turn on your mic if preferred. Jay Salakin from the STF has kindly joined us to offer technical support. We will also be recording tonight's session for those who were unable to attend, and it will be available on the McDowell website. I will now invite the researchers to introduce themselves and then share their work. Once they are done presenting, we will have some time for questions and conversation.
All right, thanks so much. Jay, do you want me to share the slides or were you going to share the slides? What are we doing with the slides?
I don't have the slides that you can share it if you can.
Share the slides. Great. Okay. Perfect. Can everybody see that okay? Awesome. Thank you. Well, thank you so much for having us this evening. Derek, nice to see you. Nicole, lovely to put a face to a name. My name is Cristyne Hebert. I'm an associate professor at the University of Regina in the Faculty of Education. My research looks at teacher education, assessment, and then, of course, digital literacies with a particular focus on maker spaces, maker pedagogy, maker education, and game-based learning. I will maybe pass things over to Aaron and then Curtis, and they can introduce themselves as well.
Hey, good evening. It's funny, I clearly haven't Zoomed in a while when I'm having to like update and like get a new password, and double verify. So maybe that's a good thing these days. My name is Aaron Warner. I am a middle years teacher now. For a long time I identified as a grade 7-8 teacher, and but I virtually started teaching grade 6. I teach currently at Grant Road School. I'm very interested in what we're talking about tonight, and much of what Kristen is um, doing in her research as well. Anything making, anything building, coding, tinkering, prototyping is what makes me excited about teaching. So I'm happy to be here, and thank you to everyone for having us.
Hello, my name's Curtis Norman. It's my 24th year being a teacher and year 6 of being a vice principal in Regina Public Schools. With my vice principal hat, I play many roles in the school, one as a teacher librarian as well. So when I saw a way to engage students in our school using STEAM, I jumped at the opportunity to be part of this project, and can't wait to share with you some of the stuff that happened, some of the great things that happened in our building here this year.
So our plan for this evening is to walk you through this research project. I'll go over the literature review, talk a bit about objectives and purpose, set up the context for you, talk about the participants and our research question, and then dig into the methodology and the findings. So I'm really excited to be here to talk about this project tonight because this project was a very long time in the making. Aaron and I met at a workshop, I think it was back in 2018. The university hosted a Makey Makeys workshop. And so a few folks gathered after that and started to have some conversations about, what would it look like to bring some of what we're interested in around making into a classroom context in a research project. What are some ideas that we can come up with? And so we chatted over the span of a year. We put together a proposal. It was accepted, and we were just about ready to get into the classroom to start digging our heels in and doing some of this work. And then, of course, COVID happened. So we reconvened a couple of years later, once we were able to, sort of do this work again in schools, had a new research team. So Curtis was able to join. Some other folks stepped into some other roles and had to step away. And I think that what was really exciting was this gave us a new opportunity to reimagine what we had initially thought we were going to do. And I think in the end, sort of make it better, frankly. So I'll dive in first with a bit of the context with respect to the lit review. So we know, there are lots of folks who are doing work with maker spaces in classroom contexts already. So this isn't, new work or revolutionary work, but there has started to be some more, I think, emphasis on or interest in the value for making in thinking specifically about its ability to support students learning in STEM subjects. Uh, when we're thinking about the educational benefits, we're also, beyond science, tech, engineering, and mathematics, thinking about those more general skills that students are developing when they adopt that maker mindset or are doing some work in maker spaces. So we're thinking about, 21st century competencies, as we typically call them, creative thinking, problem solving, being able to collaborate, right? Work well with others, and then taking on this sense of responsibility and ownership over their own learning. And so, of course, this is asking teachers or pedagogues to kind of put on some different hats as they, reimagine what this space look like, giving up some of that responsibility and ownership over their own classroom and really letting students take charge or take the lead. Typically, we align maker pedagogy with, constructionism, where students are learning by, putting things together in ideally a pretty unstructured environment. So there's really this focus on play-based learning, problem-based learning, project-based learning, students working together to um, put their minds together to formulate some of these inquiry-based projects. And the benefits are often that they're more engaging for students than, so-called traditional instruction. I put in air quotes. So we were interested in focusing on this idea of a maker mindset. So what is that? The maker mindset is really, again, self-directed and interest-driven, supporting the failure and retrial, collaborative, encouraged knowledge sharing, and situated in open and tool-rich physical sites for ongoing projects. A bit wordy there. Um, I like this definition from Chu et al., who described the maker mindset as a culture that celebrates certain key values of personal production, problem solving, a frame of thinking by which the maker addresses problems by seeking do it yourself solutions, a belief that they either have or can acquire the means to construct a solution, and possess a creative curiosity to seek solutions that the maker can construct on their own. And a really key component of this is your ability to, of course, tolerate risk and failure. And we'll talk about this a little bit more in terms of the students and some of the things that they grappled with in the findings section of the presentation. So they're experimenting, they're engaging in play and trying to, move this idea that they have into, some form of reality. So when we're thinking about what that entails for the teacher, Sito et al. Talk about, the maker mindset from the teacher perspective then involves openness, curiosity. So some of those same sort of attitudes or proclivities as students. It's being creative, it's being responsive, and of course, willing to include technology and materials into professional practice. This framework, this image on the left here is from Chu et al. We talk about these three key elements of maker mindset. So, one piece is motivation, students' willingness to engage in making activities, or I really want to do this. Self efficacy, the perceived ability to perform in specific making tasks. So, I believe I can do this. And then interest. So, this is that connection to engagement. I'm really enjoying what it is that I'm doing as I'm making. There have been a number of studies conducted on maker mindsets. I don't want to spend too much time on this. It's often folks going into school contexts and focusing on those three elements that I identified already. So, looking at how students are developing self efficacy, motivation, and interests, and then the relationship between the three of these. So, an interesting study by Kim and Zimmerman found that the three dimensions of a maker mindset aren't always positively correlated with one another. So we have students who, maybe are developing their self-efficacy, but aren't particularly motivated or interested, or they're really interested, but their self-efficacy or their ability to believe that they can succeed in this environment isn't quite where it needs to be yet. Which raises some interesting questions again about what that sort of ideal environment is for fostering a maker mindset in students. And then Anderson et al. Interviewed youth to explore failure mindsets, which isn't explicitly what we looked at in this study, but again, interesting when we think about risk and failure as part of this maker mindset. Paying attention to the types of learners who can risk failure. And they found that how activities were structured around flexibility, scale, finality, materiality, and importantly, the facilitator's influence. So, how the facilitator set up that environment really impacted students' conceptions of failure. And so, on a basic level, again, we're thinking about, how is schooling sort of socialize students into or away from conceptions of failure? And then, who are when we're thinking about students' identities, who are those students who can afford to fail and who are those students who can't? Or who are those students who are comfortable with failure and who are the students who failure becomes really quite a big risk? Okay, so objectives and purpose of the study. Uh, this project aims to evaluate how teachers modeled a maker mindset for their students. We were interested in this notion of self-efficacy. So, how could students build up sort of their confidence in working in these types of environments? And then also some of the challenges that they faced with that as well. In what ways does teaching through a school-based maker community of practice impact how making is taken up in the classrooms? Interested also in the effect of on the school community, right, of really trying to adopt this maker mindset, and then what teachers perceived as next steps. And then the practical piece, the challenges and limitations that teachers face in using making and fostering maker pedagogies in their classroom practice. So we had two schools. One was Aaron's school, and one was Curtis's school. And we've renamed them Vibank and Clivart. So we had the teacher researchers at each school, and this is Curtis and Aaron here, who were already using making in some capacity in the classroom, or deem themselves as loosely, anyways, maker experts. So we as a team gathered to develop a mini unit in January of 2024. We met at the university and really just spent the day sort of brainstorming. What do we want this to look like? Not assuming that it needed to be the same for the two school sites, but thinking about individual populations of students at each of these schools, what would make sense in these contexts for what folks wanted to do. It was also purposefully low tech and teacher driven. So, again, we wanted to open up lots of space for individual teachers to come up with something that would work for their kids, who they obviously know best. And then, in thinking about technology, a lot of what you see around maker spaces, at least ones that are focusing on developing those STEM skills, involve a really I won't say very costly, but a somewhat costly commitment to technology. So again, I'll go back to the example of microbits, or you're using Ozobots or something like that. And so, of course, you need class kits of those, and enough for, all of the classes that are going to be doing that work. And so for this project, we decided, we need it to be low tech. We're thinking about sustainability over time, and something that the teachers who don't have any experience of making at all could grab onto and could see actually, unfolding within the context of their classroom. So Aaron and Curtis brought the mini units back to the school. They essentially recruited teachers at each of the sites who were fairly new to making, met with them, had some conversations about what this might look like, and then the units were delivered between February and June of 2024. And I think this was Aaron's idea. And I really love this idea to center this project in these three texts. So they started off by reading these texts. So Ada Twist Scientist, Rosie Revere Engineer, and Iggy Peck Architect. And that was sort of our like foundational activity, to get the students into, the mindset again of what does it mean to be a scientist? What does it mean to be an engineer? What does it mean to be an architect? And how can we think through what that means for you as students about to become makers? And we'll talk about this in a little bit more detail later, but I just wanted to highlight these pictures here. Maybe I will pass it over to Curtis, if that's okay with you, Curtis, to talk about what this looked like a little bit, and what your school looks like, what this looked like at your site.
Sure. So I am vice principal at a community school in Regina, Saskatchewan. So we have roughly 250 students. What we When I went and asked teachers that would be interested in this project, there was two teachers in particular, the grade 4, 5, and 5, 6 teacher. They were very interested because they had not done any of these STEM projects, but they had heard so much about it. They were very nervous about the high tech side of it with the Ozobots and things like that. And it's funny because my principal is the one who actually recruited me to come be part of this project. And as she asked me to be part of it, she actually handed me a bag of stuff that she had ready planned for if it went high tech. So I got all these Ozobots and stuff still under my desk here. I pull them out the odd time when I need to help a kid regulate in my office. But aside from that, they didn't make it into the classroom because we don't have a class set. They're so expensive. But that's what those teachers are worried about was the high tech stuff. When I explained to them, basically a $50 gift card at the dollar store is going to get us set up here for this STEM unit. They were in as well. I went and got a third teacher. He teaches our SLC programs, our structured learning classroom. There's 10 of them within Regina Public Schools. We're lucky to have one. Basically, an SLC classroom has a maximum 10 students in there with 3 adults in there all the time. And it's a program that helps students regulate their behavior. And I thought it'd be great to have them in there because they're a very hands-on class. And when we get back to that self-efficacy and stuff like that, and the risk about, having the failure is a risk. And this classroom I felt needed a win. And I thought they could find some of these wins within the STEM and see that they could be incorporated. So we, as a team, met and they worked it into their program here, the 3 teachers, and they met together and had the SLC students integrate into their classroom, and we'd meet in the library, and then they'd go and do various things to break them out into groups with the projects we had, whether it be random cards or anything like that we could think of creatively. And we saw a lot of success with the students in there. We did a bunch of projects, and I can talk more about that in the research or in the other slides, but it ended with a cardboard arcade that the students took part in. And even up to this year, those teachers that participated in last year, they have now worked it into their daily schedule for this year. And yeah, so it was pretty neat to see the buy-in from all the students. It was really neat to see that SLC classroom and how they found success there and then incorporated it into other areas, whether it was a novel study. They weren't so keen on writing a big paragraph about their point of view of Hatchet or something like that they read in the classroom. But if you give them some Lego, they would recreate a scene from Hatchet, and it was pretty neat to see them engage with the learning and show their knowledge in a different way through the introduction of this STEM project. So
Yeah, thank you. So yeah, as Curtis mentioned, this at this particular school, they decided to put the classes together and to meet every week, twice per week, to engage in some type of activity. Some examples of the challenges were newspaper shoes, and you'll see the pictures appear throughout the presentation of some of the creations: towers out of spaghetti, paper towers, chain links, marshmallow towers, etc. And then the cardboard arcade. We see one example here was a whole school event, and I think the community was invited as well, right? Parents and folks like that too.
yeah, we had a pizza party. We made it a big thing for parents to come in, and the thing I loved about the newspaper shoes was our very first challenge we did. No matter how hard you tried, whether you were in the SLC program or a grade 6 student, they all basically came out the same, right? So it was pretty neat for the kids to see. They're all in this together, and their best. Everything was very similar.
Aaron, I'll pass things over to you to talk about your context.
Okay. Well, yeah, this has definitely been years in the making in terms of its evolution and how we got to this place. And I think for sure I agree with what Kristen said earlier, where it's almost as if, or as though the time and the pandemic in between all of this kind of built us to where we are, and it was exciting to um, have it start getting some legs and being put into motion. And I since changed schools from when I started. We started this project. I was now at a different school on the entire side of the different side of the city, and closer to my house though. And there's so my second year, and um, just over the lunchroom, that lunchroom table, just got to know some of the staff better because I hadn't had a chance to do that the year previous, and just made some connections. And this project was coming down the line. We were trying to assemble our teams, and I got familiar with people's different styles and what they were looking for, and it was just kind of a neat group that came together. So the I was able to I shouldn't say rope in because that doesn't sound right, but I was able to entice or engage my kind of primary teachers. I wanted to see, because I was now new in grade 6. I wanted to see what this could look like in younger grades, because maybe if I was expecting too much, even in grade 7 and 8 sometimes. So Nicole Coleridge, who teaches kindergarten, I knew she was always up for something new and exciting to engage your kids. Jocelyn Hines, who I know from a long time, of different connections, school and some GSA stuff. Obviously engaged with tech and kind of innovative teaching. Rebecca Hammett, in grade 4 or 5. Who it does not he's not shy to remind anybody that she's got just a little bit of time before her timer here, but it's always excited again to try new things and be a part of different stuff. So I asked if they wanted to be a part of it, and it's been exciting since. So at our school, and I know I'm talking a lot now, we started with we wanted to really dig in on the idea of building that maker mindset. um, so our intention was to um, have a whole team event, so to bring all of our classes together. And we did that, and you'll see in a kind of a STEM project or STEM challenge like we like to do. You'll see us do that. And then from there, we kind of branched into our own different projects. And you'll see an example from Nicole's kindergarten class, and that the shark, right? From the story, that's, well, not a stick, right? And she goes out and they find sticks and they glue the sticks down, and all this, and these sticks become things. Like, amazing example of and learning can be, and how, and like, if you're looking for offshoots, like, you can teach everything in that picture alone. And we all started doing our own things. And in my classroom, we were looking at sustainability, environmental sustainability. And we had gone to see the cities of the future or future cities IMAX film, and as part of this plan, and that's what I had them do. We built, as you're seeing here, collapsible satellites that scientists are really working on right now. That can be satellited, I should say, collapsible solar panels that can be satellited into space and collect energy uninhibited from the sun above Earth, right? And this is the challenge that came from directly from the movie. To create these solar panels. And then we moved through that. We did some floodplain stuff. We did some windmill stuff. So we built windmills. We built, like, kids had to stock water from moving across their farm or whatever their place was. And then ultimately teams worked together to um, build future cities based on the learning that we had done. And you'll see that as well at some point, I think. So, but I think that's enough for me. But it was very exciting. We had a lot of fun.
Okay, so the research questions again sort of evolved. There's an example of those shoes that Curtis was talking about. How do teachers develop an understanding of making and maker pedagogy as they implement a unit around making in their classrooms? What challenges and limitations do teachers face in using making and fostering a maker pedagogy? And then, in what ways does teaching through a school based maker community of practice impact how making is taken up in classrooms and how teachers consider their maker pedagogies? And so this was, I think, a really fundamental part of the work that we wanted to do was we wanted to slowly start to build a maker community of practice by bringing folks together at two separate school sites, but then also together to sort of talk about what does this look like and how do we, beyond just the scope of this project, continue this forward to, support students in the future. And I'll note as well that we are focusing specifically on the teachers. A different kind of research project would obviously be, as researchers sort of documenting student learning in very, practical types of ways. We didn't have the students be the focus of the research project. So we're not gathering data specifically about what they're doing. We're focusing instead on, teacher conceptions of what went on in the classroom. Our methodology, basically participatory action research. So we did talk with everyone involved in the project about, being participants, being researchers and participants at the same time, what it looks like to sort of collect data. And so our teachers were, going into those spaces and really documenting the work that they were doing, taking pictures, taking notes about, what their practice looked like. And then we all met for a focus group at the end of the project to, talk through, again, learning, understandings, things like that, and go through a series of questions that we had. So I'm going to talk about these findings. So, sort of three overarching themes: maker mindset, reinforcing connections and thinking about the role of the teacher in that space, connections between teachers, and then how to sustain the mindset sort of moving forward. And I think the first one we'll talk about here is modeling risk and failure in language use. So we saw this come up a number of times. And again, we're thinking about the importance of shifting towards what it means to be a maker in these spaces and how for a number of students, this might look very different than what they are used to in a more traditional classroom context. So that doesn't mean that teachers aren't already doing this work, obviously, but it's about that shift to that mindset. So, speaking first about, and I gave some examples of the texts that folks engage with. One teacher said, "This book does a good job of modeling social emotional learning. Having those examples of modeling strategies when you're frustrated. You can go for a walk and wait for inspiration to come. You can allow space for your nervous system to regulate and come back when your brain and body are ready to learn." Another teacher said, "We can do hard things, but we don't have to do them alone. And is that not the beautiful kind of meaning of life? If you're deep in the woods, you can do it, but you don't have to do it alone." Another teacher highlighted this mantra: "I can't do this," right? Moving away from "I can't do this" to "I can't do this yet." And then finally, another teacher said, and they're with me doing some emotional regulation pieces, but they're also creating and they're building. And there's rich storytelling that's involved or connections to other things that they're seeing in their community as they're creating those things. And the most challenging student I have in my class, behaviorally, anytime we've gone ahead and done these maker projects, like right away, he's super engaged. He's eager to share his learning more so than with a traditional pencil and paper task. So, again, an example of a student who invited a little bit differently into the space, a teacher seeing sort of a shift in how they're engaging with their peers, but also with the work that they're being asked to do. Another piece of this, let me just move the Zoom bubble here, is this idea of multiple attempts, effort, imagination, and prototypes. So I'm not sure that this is going to maybe we don't need to have our first attempt be a reflection of understanding. And so, we had some really interesting conversations in the focus group about, again, that assessment piece and what students have become comfortable with and what we're inviting them to be a little bit less comfortable with. And so, in thinking about multiple attempts and prototypes, right, the emphasis is on the idea that, this first attempt doesn't have to be the perfect attempt. Um, I think it was Aaron who said, again, this whole idea behind the most magnificent thing is that this character in the book had an idea in her head of what she wanted it to look like. But to achieve that in your first go isn't practical, right? We're not getting there from the first thing we create. And he used the example of the iPhone. Like the iPhone 1 is the prototype for the iPhone 5. And obviously we're, building upon and expanding upon and making it better. It doesn't need to be the best sort of right off the bat. Another teacher said we started really introducing some formal language around what it means to be a maker and what a maker mindset is, and how that's something inherent in each of us, especially with small children and having like the power of imagination as small children starting school and the power of creativity and inspiration in our learning. So again, moving away from this idea of like, I have to get this right to, what are some different ways that I could creatively become inspired to approach this in a different kind of way? And then someone else said, so efforts over results is like one of the mantras in my classroom we've had all year. And I also noticed during the process of doing with the other classrooms or working with the other classrooms, you get those kids that are frustrated or they're dejected and they're not good at things, right? We're thinking again about this socialization. They've gone through school and with those traditional schooling structures, they're just like not getting it right. And they've been told you're not good at things. And they'll sit there for 20 minutes into the project and they have nothing done, or literally like one piece of tape around a piece of spaghetti. And that's all they've accomplished. And I found that instead of pointing out, we've wasted 20 minutes, you guys, come on, I'm going to get you to, I'm going to get going. You walk by and ask, where are we at? I see that there's some tape on that spaghetti. Well, what's that looks good? Tell me more about that. And that seems to really jolt them forward in a much more positive way than pointing out what they haven't been doing. So you point out some of the small victories that they've had. And to me, again, this is really connected to those multiple attempts, right? It's not focusing on like, here's the thing that you've done, but it's focusing on what have you done so far and how is that sort of part of this broader process that you're engaged in. Traditional schooling is a barrier. This came up a number of times. Some of the early learning teachers were talking about how their classrooms really lend themselves to the maker mindset naturally. And then, as students move through the grades, they sort of get conditioned out of that. Someone said, we're so focused on what the outcome is, right? We do this to achieve this. We kind of lose sight of that creative play and experience. So it's cool to see kids kind of thrown back into that. And it's harder for kids as they get older, functioning in that space where there isn't a right way or a right answer. Someone else said they're linear thinkers who are very much either kind of wired to be, to kind of do this or achieve this, or have been, they've been taught that this is the way, right? Through our system of education, that's how you do it. And this is how you're successful. The teacher asks you, and this is what you get done. So it's cool for them to see how some of their peers are a lot more comfortable in that space where it's like, oh, yeah. And they just start piecing it together. And then this really put it down in the ground. So they're doing where some kids get trapped, right, in their thoughts. And that's probably good for them to see their peers. And that those students have those skills too, and they're being valued and recognized. Someone else said, I can think of one student that struggled with these types of tasks, and I brought them in a similar fashion at the beginning. And it's just that inability to be able to start to do something and have it not turn out perfectly. And this child that we've talked about, I think they haven't gotten to where some of the other kids are, but I've definitely seen some positive growth with this girl, just sort of talking it out. And I like this passage because, I think the story that we don't want to tell is one where, this was a sort of magical solution for everybody in the classroom. There are definitely some students who will continue to struggle, especially those who have gotten kind of good at the game of schooling, right? They're good at getting the answers or following those directions. And for those students in particular, this type of approach might feel really uncomfortable for them. And so it may take them a little bit longer to sort of adapt to that mindset. And similarly, when we're talking about groups of students who may need some additional support, some of them, require adaptations. So it can't just be this creative, open ended process for everybody. There are some students who do need things to be broken down. And so this teacher says, some of them got pretty frustrated. And then even the ones that were enjoying it, they weren't really wanting to go much further with these big group projects. So breaking it down, doing some smaller stuff within our classroom might have really benefited them at the end. So again, it's thinking about like, what are the skills of my specific students? And then what are the kinds of supports that I know that they're going to need? I think this is my last slide about the students, and then I'll turn it over to Curtis and Aaron to see if there's anything specific that they want to add about the students and how they were taking this up. I thought this piece was really interesting too. Wait, sorry, that was really loud. I tried to catch it quickly. Trust and strength. Trust and the strength inventory and their importance in building engagement and collaboration. And you'll see a lot in the literature around maker spaces, this sort of assumption that because you are inviting kids in together to do something that is conceived of as like really exciting and different for them, that automatically they're going to know how to collaborate with one another and that they're going to be engaged. Like that's just, spoken as though it is a truth. And I think what some of the teachers really highlighted was that building trust with students is really important for their ability to be able to take risks and to take risks alongside other students. So one says, we wouldn't have been able to achieve that in September because it did require a lot of kids being okay to problem solve without that direct help of the teacher, to be okay with the prototyping and first tries and first attempts and things like that. In one school context, the one where everyone was working together, the groupings weren't the same every time. And so there were some conversations around, the work that was taking place there as students really got to know each other. So this passage here, I think somebody commented on the fact that you could walk around and maybe get the impression that students were off task. But then we sort of disrupted that idea by saying, well, they're not necessarily getting with the task at hand, but maybe it's the social side of things, right? They're navigating into levels of trust and deciding who's going to do this and who's going to do that. What's your job, right? What are you supposed to be doing? And so we don't want to start from the assumption that, again, if students are being asked to collaborate, they do need to get to know one another a little bit, especially in these contexts where they're working with kids from other classes. And they do need to build some kind of cohesion, right? So in one context, I'm not sure if it was the whole group or an individual class, but they had done a strength inventory, and so brought that to the conversation, like evaluating the students individually. Hey, this is what I'm really good at. Here's what I bring to the table. Hey, here's what I'm really good at. This is what I bring. And so one teacher said, how do we highlight and draw attention and value the strengths within the space? Because so that students are seeing things a little bit differently, right? And a mixed group of kids isn't necessarily going to, be again, comfortable with working with one another. They're wanting to find their people. But how can we still encourage them to work together, and to play into their strengths, essentially, right? And then finally, one teacher said, and then you have to be creative in how you make those connections. And so this maker mindset might actually be one of those outlets to make the connection with them again, right? To get them to buy into school a little bit, where maybe if school isn't traditionally a space where they can excel or have succeeded, they can see some success, right? In this non-traditional kind of way, and maybe have that carry over a little bit into a different subject area or something like that. So this person said, I see that as pretty important in our school. Curtis, I'll throw it over to you. Is there anything you want to add or build on?
The couple things that we did at our school, like at the start of staff meetings, I actually would present some of these STEM challenges to the staff, and you could see some of those pictures back there. And then it was interesting because you could share with your students, like, "Hey, I actually did this." Like the teacher would be, "I did this, with the teacher down the hall and the kindergarten teacher, and this is how we went about this tower challenge." And it was fun to see that the students could kind of compare how the teachers handled it and how they handled it and success and failure within that. So that was pretty neat to see. And I was also trying to get more buy-in with more staff just to show them how easy you could challenge these students with some of these creative maker tasks. And then the other piece is we talked earlier about getting the community to engage the greater school community. And so then what I've been doing this year for our parent teacher three-way conferences, I've turned the gym during the day into a big maker mindset kind of stadium. And we have 6 different tasks that kiddos can bring their parents or grandparents in with them before or after their interview, and they can go about, and some stayed for like an hour and did all these challenges with their family members, and it was pretty neat. It was just dollar store items. I made sure everything was very feasible, and then we also tied it into the other half of the gym. We had a responsive instructive coach who was talking about some reading skills and stuff like that. So it was just a way to get the community in, engaged, and show them some of the cool things we're doing within the building. So that's kind of how we've built on it from this project.
Aaron, anything you noticed?
Um, excuse me, I'm clearly losing my voice. Yeah, I noticed a lot of things. I think, and a lot of exciting things. And a piece that we maybe haven't highlighted tonight so far is kind of the kind of the conversations, and when we brought the 2 schools together, and we brought Curtis's team and my team, and we sat around a big boardroom table, and as teachers we got to order out for lunch, you know what I mean? It was awesome. And we just were sharing like that, like ideas. We were sharing our own personal experiences. With teachers were talking about their like hesitations or maybe like stumbling points into venturing into this maker mindset. It was exciting. We read those children's books. We kind of like lit a lot of sparks. I know for myself, I had um, felt a bit of a dip in my kind of career enjoyment. Last year was of course a rough year for teachers, but that spark that we got to create as a team, as a group, all of, I'm not sure, 10 of us or 8 of us collectively, with Kristen included, either live or sometimes via video chat. It was great. So to build that mindset from the top down, so to speak, and then to bring it into our schools, and to be able to again share with the teachers in my group, it was awesome too. And to see, Rebecca, we did a lot of collaborating, working together, because she just wanted to see the mechanics of it, right? And my head just goes there, right? So it was fun to be able to do those sorts of collaborations as well. So just, and just having a good time together, which we watch kids do really awesome things. So that those highlights from the top down are definitely what stood out for me.
Yeah, so I think shifting gears a little bit to talk about the teachers, that's sort of the tail end here. I think we really saw the opportunity for a project like this to build connections among staff. And again, folks who hadn't necessarily worked with one another before, having that opportunity and being excited about that opportunity to connect with one another. So, one participant in the focus group said, "It feels like a safe space." I think that's what really made this work well because we all bring something different to the table. But it started with this super trusting relationship that we have. Someone else said, "I love that collaborative piece. Working with groups of people, you learn so much from each other and it inspires you to try new things." Someone else said, "I think it lends itself to the whole school environment. I don't get an opportunity a lot to work with SOC kids, so I feel like, that's brought a different relationship. But see the kids that I wouldn't normally see, now we're next to each other, and then you build those connections, and it helps with all kinds of things in the school. One of those having a bad day, and you can check in, hey, how are you doing? I think that those are the pieces that make our space what it is. Um, you can get together and work as a team. That's where the bond is. For the one teacher, I think it was the SLC teacher, he talked about like being in the basement and sort of that's where his working space was. And so not really having a lot of opportunities to collaborate and obviously taking on a very different kind of role. And so he really appreciated not only getting to know his colleagues a little bit through this collaborative opportunity, but also the kids who, didn't necessarily see him often because he wasn't wandering the halls. And so it just was a nice way for him to feel connected, I think, again, to that sort of broader school community. And then finally, someone said, trying to push people into new uncharted territories. And maybe that's not as much, but I think situations where we've taken um, like a snowball, taking what you guys have done and then what we did with our own group. I'm sure next time that we do that, there'll be 2 or 3 other classes that jump on board and want to do it. And maybe we'll spill it out into the gym and into the hallway. And so thinking about how can we support our colleagues and in our like level 2, right? Bringing people along with surfing as we move between analogies. And so we did talk a lot at the focus group about, how do we sustain the mindset? And I think it's a not a danger so much as a drawback of these kinds of projects. You get a little bit of funding, you get an opportunity to meet with one another, and then some exciting stuff happens, and then it just sort of fizzles out because there isn't, sustainability sort of built into it. And so we wanted to think about, well, how could we ensure that that doesn't happen? And I think, as we spoke about at the beginning, one way was to not be really reliant upon high tech items so that, teachers are sort of stuck and that if they don't have access to the odds of bots, for example, there's nothing that they can do with it, right? So they know the tools that they need, they have some experience sort of doing these things, and they can scale up for themselves or even scale down if they need to and invite some other folks into those activities. So, I thought this was a neat idea. Someone said we talked about what would it be like to follow one kid, oh, one kid from there and vote to revive in the way some typos, sorry. But I think the idea was like to see a student in 1 year and then have them build upon that learning the next year and then build upon the learning the following year and sort of see their evolution like over time following one kid in like a longitudinal sort of way as they cultivate their maker mindset and then see sort of what the effect of that is on their approach to learning, right? Uh, Aaron, yeah, you're muted.
Um, oh, well, now I've actually lost what I was going to speak. I just got so packed up. I remember, I'll pop back in. I apologize.
All good. Um, and so someone else is saying next year, I think I might be taking on, maybe a TL role or a librarian role. How can I open up that space? And maybe that's really the space to conceptualize of a maker space. Um, and so how do we sort of, put in a timetable and make engagement with this space a little bit more intentional? Someone else said, I think, the more people you can have on board and the bigger things you can do to bring everybody together to develop that common language, the common focus, I think that really enhances the sustainability of a project like that. Someone else is talking about, flexibility so that you could be using some science minutes towards a project like that. And then, of course, buy-in. Here we have Curtis, who is an administrator, being invited into the project as well by an administrator. So, sort of like a, a meta invitation. But, that's in many respects one of the foundational pieces, too, to have school admin be on board with something like this so that it's cultivating that environment within the school as its entirety. And then finally, another teacher said, I learned a lot personally because I got to see students in a different way. So this is just the beginning for me. I've already planned some different things that are just small on a smaller scale for my classroom to continue for the year. So this person really like jumped on and saw a way forward with it. Um, Someone said, I'm sure next time that we do it, there'll be some other classrooms to jump on board. Oh, sorry. This is a repeat. I loved it so much that I put it twice on the slides. Um, I thought this piece was really important too. So ensuring that everybody is understanding the why and not just the how, because it's easy to sort of get lost in the, okay, well, these are the tools that I need, and this is the activity that I'm doing, and overlook the sort of bigger ideas. So we talked about why, and it's the idea and reasoning behind it, the big why of developing or cultivating a maker mindset. What is it hoping to achieve? Is it getting kids and putting them into situations where they're problem solving? Is it changing the language? Is it making sure all kids get an opportunity where maybe their skill sets and interests and strengths are our highlight? And I think that's maybe one of the challenges in bringing others on board is the why. And I love that in thinking about it as an invitation. So it becomes a whole sort of group conversation and a way to sort of entice somebody in, right? Yeah, sure. Um, Popsicle sticks and marshmallow figures and shoes are exciting, but also, let's think about the more overarching sort of impact. And then this is sort of highlighting again the practical elements when you have some buy-in from school admin. So I've seen it done. I've been in a school where there was an administrative team who made it a priority, whatever that learning initiative was. So the principals were in the classroom covering teachers. And so, what excuse then can you make? There are no more excuses, right? It's just this beautiful opportunity that everybody's buying into. Um, and so it's getting those people, it's making those connections, and that's how we encourage sort of reluctant folks to jump in. It's taking those barriers off their plates and putting those supports into place for them. So I think lots of key takeaways, and I don't feel like I do it justice at all in sort of summarizing them on a slide. I do think that we saw a shift in folks in their interest in adopting this more open-ended problem and project-based type of approach in the classroom. We saw lots of teachers jump in and do their best to create maker types of spaces for students in their classroom. I think that, more opportunities to collaborate with other teachers and support from admin will make this something that's feasible in the long run. And again, I think those chances to extend beyond the classroom, be that working with kids down the hall, other teachers, be that bringing in community members to have sort of a culminating type of activity, really allows students to enhance buy-in into their work, and also an opportunity for the school to bring folks in who maybe don't otherwise enter the school building very often, right? To be excited about what their kids have created. um there's something else I wanted to add that I'm now forgetting. um yeah, I think I'm optimistic at the fact that this can continue in these school spaces, that these teachers were really keen on um, taking this up as they move forward with their careers, and that hopefully there'll be other folks who hop on board with this as well. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and pass things back over to Derek.
Hey, thank you. Thank you, Kristen, Curtis, and Aaron. Appreciate the time and the expertise that you shared with us tonight. want to open up to our attendees. If there's any questions, please go ahead and put your hand up or put something in the chat. There's all kinds of ways to ask a question here, so go ahead. While they're thinking, I have a question. So, uh, these types of projects are always take an initiative by someone in a building, and it's often teachers who are super keen on the technology piece or the engagement piece that they see with potential they see with students, and you covered a lot of that with your presentation tonight. What advice would you give to teachers looking to incorporate maker pedagogy into their classrooms? Go ahead, Aaron.
Um, Hear my voice there. I would say to start small, and I'm not saying to limit your expectations or lower your expectations, but in terms of the expectations on yourself or what it can or will be, and that's the piece that doesn't really matter, right? And if you take something like, I think Nicole's example is where the shark, right? It's not a stick book, and the final product is this art gallery of kids who've made these stories out of sticks, right? And they brought them back and they found them, collected them with purpose, and there's a story attached to them already that um, they have ownership. There's so many avenues you could take, um, but that's in kindergarten, right? Where we always kind of like use the lens of play-based learning, and I've always been really fascinated as to why by the time we're in grade 7 and 8, we don't just let them we don't nobody seems to be comfortable, um, just playing for a bit, right? Despite the outcome. So that's what I would say. Start with something, yeah, simple in the sense that it's your favorite book that you could, attach a STEM, or email me. I could, give you some examples as well. Um, and then find somebody who gets into that headspace, right? That can start to think, and you'll start to see the connections. I'm confident for sure.
There.
Yeah, and I would just like encourage staff to kind of take the risk and model that for the students in their classroom, and not be so concerned about matching the activity with like certain outcomes at the start. There are so many different activities out there that are engaging and fun the kids can have fun with. Then later on, you can kind of tie it into, math and fractions and stuff like that. And you can maybe get some kids to buy in instead of just the standard sit and get that they might get from there. But, just take the risk and have some fun with it and see where it goes from there.
We didn't do a high-tech maker project, but I think for folks who maybe are keen on doing something like that too, I think it's, you know, being aware of the types of resources that are already available to you, attending a workshop or something like that, and then not being afraid to give it a try. Like, you don't have to be the expert. You can model that learning alongside of the students, and um again, in thinking about risk taking, it is risky and a little bit uncomfortable at times, but I think really like stressing or highlighting that play component makes it a fun learning experience for everybody. I was so grateful to have the opportunity to work alongside these wonderful educators. I feel like Erin in particular really embodies this maker mindset. So as we're sitting for the day, sort of brainstorming ideas, you can see the cogs turning, and like he's just got so many different ideas. So pairing up with somebody, as he mentioned already, who is already sort of thinking like this or doing that work in the classroom will enable you to see your way through this in ways that you might not be able to do just on your own. Yeah.
It takes a certain um, desire and giving up the idea of having a nice orderly classroom. It can be a messy experience, right? And it's intended to be messy. And when you talk, Aaron, about the middle years, being a former middle years survivor myself, I think it is first of mind for middle years teachers to want some sense of control in the classroom, because you never know what's going to happen from one minute to the next. But I found for myself, when I gave up some of that control and allowed that play, whatever that looked like, at the time, certainly created a space where kids felt a little bit more willing to engage in other activities. So I see that there's some really significant opportunities here for students and teachers, and I think that um, we have there are some barriers that you've identified. Cost of some of the technology is certainly one of them. Are there ways where that or means that administrators in buildings can help to lower some of those barriers? And what would that take to get some of those, potentially more engaging technological play pieces in classrooms?
Well, I think you can do something as simple as just reaching out to your parent council, seeing if there's anything there they can support. And they're spending their funds tied to learning outcomes, and it's very easy to identify learning outcomes you could do there. I know just this last month here, we've had the EYES program reach out to us from the university, and that's free. And they came and did a whole day project, and they bring the high tech stuff. They teach the I was in the SLC classroom myself teaching that time, and I got to just get down on the floor with these guys, and we grapped out all these robots and had them. The Ozobots are Spiros is what we are doing. But anyways, it was nice to have an expert in there, kind of show us, and we were able to just kind of engage with the students and do that. So there is some programs out there you can get that are free. But yeah, your SCC and things like that, I think, is one thing you could probably do.
Yeah, I would again promote eyes. I think they do lots of work too around teacher training. I know we have had them in twice to work with our cooperating teachers and interns to help them sort of develop a mini unit and develop that in the classroom. So that's been great. Uh, I mean, ice. This is easier said than done, I think, for, thinking about the relationship between universities and K to 12 context as well. And I think I'm really grateful to the McDowell Foundation for providing these opportunities for us to work together. But I see that as, one of my roles as a researcher is to find opportunities to apply for grants and to get some funding and you know invite folks into spaces to do this kind of thing. So the advice that I've given to folks before has been, let the school administrator know that you are someone who's really interested in doing this type of work, so that when an email comes around about a workshop or a PD opportunity, or hey, Kristen at the university is looking for some teacher participants, the principal or VP thinks about you automatically and sort of makes that connection. Um, because I think that's an easy way to, use some grant money to buy a whole bunch of tech and have that tech actually stay, as Curtis was pulling out from under his desk, from some other grant, right? Like that's yeah, one of the things that we can do in kind of working together.
I would like echo everything that you've both been saying in terms of what's out there to access. Going along, just things that I would add is that I know I can only speak for Regina Public, but in our division we have kits available of technology. And I think they've kept them pretty current, right? So I don't know what that looks like in other divisions, but it's certainly something to explore, and then also to maybe push for, right? Because I don't think you have to look very far to find research or support as to why making in schools and using that part of your brain is really important to learning for everybody. Um, So I just wanted to, and that kind of pulls me back, and I won't talk too long to what just a couple of your earlier points, in terms of letting go of control and what that looks like in your classroom. From a teacher's point of view, for sure, and this was never the case, like always the case, or very more recently the case, where I've been able to maybe how like lose control, but within, I think Curtis said earlier, within a bit of an arena type space, right? Where we start small or big, or then however it lands, but um, part of the deal is we can't do this as a group. We can't. We simply cannot. If it's always me, the teacher cleaning up at the end of the day, right? It just doesn't. It doesn't work, right? And I don't think you have to get down the line. Like I think grade twos would understand that, right? But at least to their space. So that's something that I've really kind of leaned into, and it doesn't take long before the kids are no longer doing it because they have to, but because it's part of our machine, our operation. And that's then the space where they get to then let go too, right? I think the for me the you can I think that you could probably identify or see how my learning experience was growing up. I fidgeted in my chair this whole time. Um, uh, for me, the opportunity to build something, tinker something with something, try something out, right, was always so valuable to me. And I think that's just again how my where my head goes. So but what that does is there's a whole new set of kids who haven't been the first to put their hands up for all of the math questions, or they're not the ones who have all the answers in other times, but they're the ones who have these now unique and very valued skills, or the creativity especially that is unlocked, right? And then in contrast to that, the other kids, they start to be a little bit more comfortable with try. It's hard for some, but trying something out, right? It actually unlocks a different part of their brain, which is fun to watch as well. So I think you can create a space that is chaos, but at the same time is is not at the end of the period. I think for sure.
Wonderful. In my experience, no research project ever goes as intended. There's always things that go on, especially with little human beings. Is there anything in this particular research project that maybe surprised you, or were there some unintended outcomes, or things that happened that maybe you didn't expect?
I think for me, what was really fascinating was we ended up with two very different schools with very different populations, and drastically different contexts. And both of those school environments took up the project in different ways as well. And so I think I was, and I didn't share this with Aaron and Curtis at the time, but I think I was a little um hesitant initially because I think I am a little bit more um I like to think I'm not like a traditional researcher, but I think I'm a little bit more traditional, like, well, everybody needs to be doing, something sort of similar. And so I was surprised at how just perfectly it sort of unfolded in those two very different contexts. And it was great to, be in Aaron's classroom, for example, and see how, given the work that he's been doing with his students all year on sort of cultivating this mindset, they were able to sort of hone in on individual tasks. And then to visit Curtis's school, during some of those periods, there was just this like energy around, the projects and what they were focusing on. And there were kids all over the place as they were, like putting things together. And um, so, yeah, I think that it wasn't designed that way. It just sort of, was the folks who ended up, we had a third person who needed to leave the project for some personal reasons. And so we just ended up with these two very different contexts. Um, and I also think that we hadn't planned to make this low tech, and I'm really glad that we did. Um, and I'm glad that I think like initially for me in thinking about the research questions that we came up with and sort of how we imagine what we were going to focus on, for me anyways, that risk taking wasn't a part of it. I didn't expect um, to think about what it means to be in an environment where you feel safe to actually be working alongside. Like I've done maker stuff before, and for whatever reason that just was never a focus, and so I appreciated the opportunity to sort of think through, like, what does it mean to throw a bunch of kids together at Curtis's school who don't really know each other, and to ask them to do this like risky kind of activities together, right? And what do we need to do, and that's where that conversation about like being off task came from. Like I was doing some of those observations and I'm like, what are these kids doing? Like they're just like talking about, whatever, this thing that they did last night. And like, but like the more time I spent in that space, I was like, no, no, this is the connection building that they need to do so that this kid knows that this other kid is a safe person that they can work with. Right. And so, um, yeah, those were kind of like the surprising aha moments for me.
I like the idea, not so much of students, but the fact that the staff that participated now are all in on STEM and have worked it into their schedule. And then that one comment in there was me this year. I am the TL, the teacher librarian, and so I carved out a space in our library that now houses all our STEM items, and anybody can go use it. And if it's running low on supplies, I can replenish it just from the 4 blocks away from a dollar store. So I'll go down there and get some stuff. And then the neat thing is, like, in my role as VP and some itinerant stuff, like I do everything from kindergarten all the way to grade 7, 8. And I can give kindergartens and 7, 8s really the same STEM challenge and just see how it goes in the library. And because I take them to the library quite a bit, and I'll give them just the same challenge. And it's neat to see a kindergarten try to make a Lego tower as tall as one of their classmates, and how the 7, 8s approach it, and things like that. So that's been the real neat part, seeing the staff buy-in, just seeing the kids engage with learning at all levels.
Have you seen that study with, like, if we give a kindergartner a paper clip, and then you give, like, grade 12 a paper clip, and then you give, a university graduate, and a kindergartner will make, like, 4,000 things, and then by grade 9 or 10, you could see, the decline. It's pretty interesting. So that's cool that to be able to watch that firsthand, Curtis. That's awesome. Um, Things that kind of, stood out for me, I really, just from my experience through it, and with the lens of it, this was, as Kristen said earlier, um, from the teacher's perspective, right? We were doing our research based on the experience of our colleagues, but it was great to be able to see again, like, some of the kids who wouldn't usually step into those leadership roles, and you saw it in the one video with, when we were making the parachutes, right? And that was a hint I was going to give, is like, start with low stakes. Like, don't make it a contest right away, right? Don't make, Kristen was saying, the opportunity to work, and see somebody else's skill set. Like, this is that skills inventory that we were talking about earlier, that you can, sort of mine, right? Use the kids' language, like mine for the different skills we have within our team, and those sorts of, um, um, low stakes. I do like to throw in the idea of challenge, but mostly the challenge is the idea of the notion of like a collective challenge. Like, this is going to be a challenge sort of thing. Um, but to jump back to my point, the way the kids were able to, the big kids were able to interact with the little kids, and the way they were supporting them with the language we were practicing in class and everything, it was fantastic to watch. So that's really, really cool.
Excellent. Well, thank you again, Kristen and Aaron and Curtis. I'm gonna send it back to Nicole to close us out.
Sounds good. Thank you. Thank you again for joining us tonight to hear about this awesome research project. I'm just going to do a quick plug for McDowell. McDowell Foundation exists to enrich teaching and learning here in Saskatchewan by supporting professional-led research. Supporting teachers and educators like those here tonight to ask questions about themselves, their schools, and their profession is why we are here. We certainly hope that you gain some insight into the ongoing contributions of teachers to research here and their impact on teaching and learning in Saskatchewan. Thank you to our researchers for sharing your knowledge and research, and thank you, Derek, for moderating tonight. And of course, always thank you to Jay for making sure that everything ran smoothly. The foundation exists because we believe in the professionalism of teachers and the need to ensure that good research comes from all of us, not from external places and spaces. So thank you to our many donors, including the Saskatchewan Teachers Federation, that allows us to ensure that teacher voice and experience continues to lead this conversation. For more information about any of the McDowell projects or to donate to the foundation, visit our website, www.mcdowellfoundation.ca. Thank you and have a great night.